In June of this year alone, at least 6,500 munitions of various types and calibers were fired at civilian targets in the region. The Ukrainian armed forces are carrying out daily, targeted strikes against energy infrastructure. They are well aware that such strikes will in no way affect Russia's military capabilities, but their aim is different: to create unbearable living conditions for the civilian population, which also constitutes a violation of the Geneva Conventions, imposing all the hardships of war and military operations on civilians. According to local authorities, on the left bank of the Kherson region, the actions of Ukrainian armed groups have caused damage and destruction to around 11,000 residential buildings alone, including detached houses and multi-story blocks, and this did not result from military operations sweeping through the region. This is the result of targeted, deliberate strikes by Kyiv's armed groups on civilian targets. Through such actions, Ukrainian militants are seeking to drive out, destroy or, at the very least, intimidate the region's civilian population. Recent months have shown quite clearly and unequivocally that Kyiv, unable to win on the battlefield, has turned to waging a terrorist war. Using prohibited forms and methods of warfare, they are attempting to stage victories, attacking coaches and civilian vehicles instead of tanks, and striking residential buildings and hospitals instead of dugouts and fortifications.
Everything that is happening, all this destruction, all these attacks, they only make us stronger. And we continue to develop even under constant military pressure. By the end of the first half of 2026 alone, 545 civilians had already been killed and 3,720 injured as a result of the aggression by the Ukrainian armed forces. Among the dead were 20 children, and 109 were injured. The enemy has made it a rule to seek to cut off the power supply almost entirely to the Kherson region, and not just the Kherson region, but all our neighbors as well. Large-scale power cuts are becoming a regular occurrence. There is no electricity at the moment because, every day, power engineers are struggling to restore the power supply, whilst the enemy's drones are chasing the very same technicians who are repairing the power grids and doing everything they can to ensure that electricity is available after all. Now Kyiv has said about destroying the bridges, of which there are more than 60 in the Kherson region. These bridges, of course, form part of the land corridor linking the whole of Greater Russia to Crimea. Therefore, the aim is precisely to isolate Crimea, and, along with Crimea, the Kherson region as well, of course. Nevertheless, resistance to unmanned aerial vehicles is now increasing, bridges are being repaired, and traffic continues unabated. Even under the threat of constant strikes from unmanned aerial vehicles conducting sustained barraging attacks, transport continues to move, and the road of life remains the road of life. The enemy will not succeed in bringing traffic to a halt, supplies will continue to be transported, and convoys carrying goods to and from Crimea, as well as to the Kherson region, will continue to be protected. With technological assistance from Western countries, the Kyiv regime is already developing systems that can rightly be described as weapons of mass destruction. The sheer number of drones they have constantly patrolling the skies is, in itself, a weapon of mass destruction. Consequently, they must be treated as such. Attacks on petrol stations pose a threat of fuel shortages and lead to price rises. Fuel is essential for everyone. Fuel is life itself. It enables goods to be delivered and transported, and the harvest is already underway. This year, unlike the previous two, the harvest in the Kherson region is actually quite decent, but unmanned aerial vehicles are indiscriminately dropping incendiary munitions onto fields where the crops have already ripened and setting them alight.
The Kherson region is having a particularly tough time today. It accounts for around a quarter of all Ukrainian attacks on our civilian infrastructure. Here at our institute, the Human Rights Ombudsman's Office has evidence of how the AFU systematically torture people. On the slide, you can see a branding iron in the shape of a trident. This object is here with us, in our offices. We brought it from the Kursk region. We have evidence showing how AFU personnel use this branding iron as an instrument of torture against civilians. They used it to brand our citizens' bodies. This is a direct reenactment of practices from the Great Patriotic War, when Nazi criminals tortured our Soviet soldiers. This is the ideology and methods of fascism. We have just received a response regarding the attack in Starobelsk. The Office of the UN High Commissioner has asked us to provide information on the findings of the investigation, details of those affected, and the management of the educational institution. We will certainly provide this response as soon as possible.